If you're like me, you spend lots of time poring over maps, looking at weather data, all in an effort to help predict when and where my best times to hunt will be. It'd be nice if there was a reliable source with all this information in one place. Enter the Spartan Forge app. Unlike some other predictive apps on the market, Spartan Forge was created from military combat intelligence experience tailored for hunters, and stands at the nexus of machine learning and whitetail deer hunting. No more man-made algorithms. This is a predictive model based on real GPS collared deer data, historical and predictive weather, and the next level of mapping imagery, all at my fingertips. I've been using the iOS app this season, and it has replaced all my other mapping tools. Visit SpartanForge.ai and sign up today, or head to your iOS or Android app store. Use the promo code TRUTH to save some money and download it today. Mobile hunters, if you're interested in upping your mobile game, then head to tetherednation.com and check out their saddle gear. There are a few things you can actually buy that will help you become a better deer hunter or give you the freedom to hunt any tree or any situation. This is the reason why I started saddle hunting in the first place and why I use Tethered's gear. I can honestly say that Tethered's saddle gear has changed how I hunt for the better. Big tree, little tree, from the ground, it doesn't matter. I'm untethered by my gear to hunt the best setup for the situation, instead of hunting for a tree that my gear can use. My current core setup consists of the Phantom saddle, Tethered 1-sticks, and the Predator platform, along with an assortment of their accessories. So if you want to up your mobile game, head over to tetherednation.com.
Welcome to the Truth from a Stand Deer Hunting Podcast, brought to you by Spartan Forge. I'm your host, Clint Campbell, and you're listening to episode number 333. Today I'm joined by my buddy Zach Ferenbaugh, and we're talking about finding the silver lining. So stay tuned. All right. What is up, everyone? Happy Wednesday to you. Hope you're doing well. Hope you are feeling fine, and hope that your turkey dreams are coming true if you're in a state that is open now. Right now, got a couple days here left in PA before we can start chasing gobblers. But I was just actually talking to my buddy, you know him, you love him, Mr. Chad Sylvester from Exodus, and he was actually headed home to take a nap because he was out chasing birds this morning. And the buddy that he was with, they got one bird on the ground and couldn't quite strike one up for him, so he's going to get back after it tomorrow morning and see if he can't get himself a bird. But I have a couple days here yet in PA. Was watching the weather. I was looking last week to kind of see how the weather was going to shake out. Last I looked, and it didn't look good for the turkey opener. It looked like it was going to be a bit of a pisser. So I need to kind of check in on that. And so I'm on the fence as to whether or not I'm going to actually head up to the North Piece. And I'll just be honest, that's going to be me taking my shotgun and walk while I do some deer scouting. That's exactly how that'll turn out. Or I had considered actually heading back to my dad's place and maybe getting a turkey hunt in with the old man. But we'll watch the forecast and see what's happening. If I get good weather, I'm probably going to go to the North Piece just because I need to get some time in. Timing up there, but this past weekend, nothing too crazy happened as far as deer hunting was concerned. But I did have a tournament that I was in. A bunch of guys at the gym that I train at. We had a tournament in and around the Philadelphia area. A bunch of guys did well. I actually won all my matches, so I ended up winning 2 divisions. Had a couple submissions, so it was awesome. But the best part of the weekend was actually we had a little kind of like gym gathering here at the house, barbecue, fired up the smoker, and just kind of hung out with all the guys that I typically roll with. Had some drinks, had some good food, and just some good community, which was much needed. The weather was kind of finally cooperating, and it was just good to kind of be outside, play some cornhole, play some can jam after a good weekend of competition. But with that kind of closes maybe the competition window for me for several months, most likely. And now I'm kind of shifting my focus, getting ready for turkey season, and then trying to wrap up, the little bit of deer scouting that I did do, and at least get, my cameras kind of back out into the timber, which is really the main plan for the North Piece, is to check out a few areas of interest. Missed all the green up, unfortunately, missed the time before green up. I'm not sure how green it'll be in the North Piece right now. It usually lags behind what I have locally, so maybe I'll get a little bit of grace there. But more importantly, I'm going to just kind of go snag the cameras that I had up there, finish doing my inventory, and then start putting cameras out and just start trying to put on some some leather under my feet and put some ground under my feet and put on some miles and see what we can turn up. But speaking of trail cameras, you guys heard me mention this in the past. Going to mention it one more time here. You guys probably have a bunch of trail cameras that are laying around of various brands that are probably broken and so forth, and not worth anything really. But one cool thing that my buddies at Exodus do, they got a bunch of feedback last year that people love this, so they did it again this year, which is they're opening up their upgrade program. And so you're probably wondering what that is. So this is actually how it works. So in short, you order any camera on ExodusOutdoorGear.com, use the code UPGRADE, that's UPGRADE, and you'll save 25% on any Exodus render bundle, or rival bundle. After you place your order, the folks at Exodus, they'll send you a return label for your trade-in camera. After they receive the camera, they'll ship out your full order to you. And if you're not familiar with Exodus, I'll just give you the Cliff Notes version of this. They're 5-year warranty, 5-year theft and damage coverage, and best-in-class customer service. I've personally been using Exodus basically since they started, going on, I think, 7 years for me personally. And they've just been super reliable. I use a lot of their cell cameras, the renders, a couple rivals to put out here this upcoming weekend. And I really dig the cell cameras because it helps you kind of keep places that are either really far away that are hard to get to check a camera, or it keeps me out from checking places that are kind of sensitive. I want to kind of leave prime until it's prime time to be able to kind of have an ambush hunt, if you will. So make sure you take advantage of the this interesting and kind of unique savings opportunity and replace your old and junky cameras with the bulletproof and dependable Exodus camera. This upgrade program is only good for the remainder of April or while supplies last. So as always, be sure you head over to their website, sign up for their email newsletter, and stay up to date with all the stuff that they have going on, because I've caught wind they've got some pretty killer stuff that's going to be coming down the pipeline, and you're going to want to make sure you're hip to that information. So for the details on this campaign, head to ExodusOutdoorGear.com/pages/Exodus upgrade program, or you can head to the show notes of this podcast episode and check out the link to this campaign, and I will have all the deets there for you as well. So with that, going to go ahead and jump into today's show. Have a super cool show for you guys today. Have on my buddy, Mr. Zach Ferenbaugh. It's been probably maybe 2 years since I've had Zach on. You guys know him. You love him from the hunting public, of course, Mr. Long Hair himself. And it's a little bit of an interesting conversation. I'm kind of in this, off-season kind of mode of exploration, beyond the scouting kind of component of it, right? And, and this was really kind of the short story was Zach had an injury there late winter, that he had to have a surgery, and we'll talk about it. That's kind of put him on the sidelines for this like turkey season and stuff like that. And, partially for me, I've not been able to do the type of scouting that I typically like to do in the off season. Some of that was weather related and out of my control. And then there was some family stuff that I've had to kind of work through that's required my time, to where I kind of had to, reprioritize some things. And hunting became not as important as it had been in the past. Not that it won't be as important again in the future, but there were just some things as an adult that needed, my attention, and I needed to address them, and I needed to be fully focused on those things from a family perspective. And so with that, you don't always, get what you want, but you just might find you get what you need, right? If to quote a song. But a lot of times you might be forced into these kind of situations where, you don't, get the time that you want to have. But if you look at it as a negative, it can eat you up. Or you can kind of look at it for what it is and kind of be present in that moment and kind of be curious about, what other opportunities might exist if you just let yourself be comfortable being uncomfortable for a moment. And so that's kind of what Zach and I talk about a little bit, is kind of his forced being on the sidelines, how it's changed his perspective maybe a little bit, what maybe he's gained from it, and what the silver lining ultimately is of having this injury and having to work through it, and being away from his friends and being away from hunting, and the different perspective that has kind of given him, in short, these past few months as he's kind of rehabbing and working himself back. So with that, we'll go ahead and jump into today's show. And as always, thank you all for listening. Awesome, folks. We are back with another episode of the Truth from the Stand Deer Hunting Podcast. And today I have on my buddy. We haven't had him on in a little while. You know him. You love him. He's Zach freaking Ferenbaugh. I'll give you a middle name of freaking because I think like your initial should be ZFF. I think it'd be fitting.
That's awesome. I'll take it.
You'll take it?
Yeah, my girlfriend sometimes calls me ZDF, Zach Drama Ferenbaugh. I'm being dramatic about certain things. So
yeah.
I'll take what freak.
freaking, yeah, freaking, right? It's like, hit the hair, it's like, it just fits, man. Drama though, I don't get, well, you're an excited and optimistic guy. So I would say it that way as opposed to drama. Drama might be a little harsh, maybe.
It's a lot of, I think it's mostly sarcastic from both ends. It's like I start complaining about something, kind of blowing it up bigger than what it really is. And then she's like, oh yeah, you're dramatic. And yeah.
Right.
And I just,
right.
talk enough to fill up all the air. So it's like at some point I'm going to say something that makes her feel like I'm being dramatic, I guess.
Hold on, I missed that last part of what you said. What'd you say?
I also talk enough that I talk enough and fill up enough air that at some point I'm going to say something that she thinks is me being dramatic. So
right, there you go. The odds are forever in your favor.
Yeah.
But how you been, man? I think the last time we talked, you hadn't moved yet, and so now you're a Westerner now, right? You're no longer a Flatlander.
I guess technically, yeah, I am. I moved to Colorado officially in 2020. And yeah, I mean, I definitely like the benefits that I have of living here. It's super cool. The elk hunting is really a big thing for me. But at the end of the day, too, as far as people that like watch or listen, maybe thinking, like, oh, Zach's just going to become a Western hunter. And it's like you can really only do so much Western hunting throughout the season. At some point, like everywhere else back east is still open and everything's done out here. And I really never want to give up my eastern hills. I really like the eastern hills, deer, turkey hunting, like being in the east too. I just like really being everywhere. So at the end of the day, I'm still going to keep moving around and keep checking out different areas, because that's like a whole mission of mine, is like see as many different places as possible.
What places do you have left kind of on your bucket list that you haven't been able to get to hunt? Like, well, maybe we'll just maybe we'll keep it to like the lower 48, right, in Alaska. Like we'll do that because I know I would assume you're like, man, wherever there's critters, whatever continent, like I'm into it.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's pretty much the problem, because it's like I'll sit here and I'll start thinking and be like, man, I still got a lot of things I got to do in Ohio, which is like where I've hunted the most. And then I hunted PA a couple of years ago, but I'm like, man, I really want to go back there. And then I start thinking about some of the places that I've been in Virginia and West Virginia, and then North Carolina. And it's like I got all these places that, I've turkey hunted, and I'm able to jump around a little bit faster turkey hunting, and I really want to revisit all of those places as well, to deer hunt, and not necessarily specifics in some examples, yes, some not, but I really just want to keep hunting every state and as many places within those states as I possibly can. And I feel bad because a lot of times we get a comment or something like, hey, come to whatever, and it's like, man, trust me, it's on the list. Like, it's not a matter of not wanting to. And I mean, I have a lot of interest in hunting Florida for deer, even, like, just want to try different stuff, have different experiences, and just try to be able to relate to people that are hunting in those areas as much as possible, because that really is a big part of what I get satisfaction out of doing, is being able to experience something and better connect to the people that, are lifelong hunters there. And I just think that every spot, it's got a little bit of uniqueness, but at the end of the day too, a deer's a deer and a turkey's a turkey. I mean, I really do believe that. It's just they adjust accordingly to different factors, one of which is us hunters.
right Yeah, for sure. The one thing I always thought would be really cool to do, and it was like a video idea that I had, and it kind of evolved over time, but it was doing taking an almost like an Anthony Bourdain kind of approach to hunting, right? To where you would travel around the country and you would hunt like these pieces of public land, similar to what you guys do, but in these kind of like known areas. Let's just say, like, for the purpose of the show, it'd be like places that might be really kind of like known or associated for like a very large chunk of public, like a big state park or a national forest or whatever the case is, and doing almost like the hunt,
but also like the human interest aspect of like the cultural impact of that public land on the actual local community, like what it means to that community, like culturally, economically. So you kind of paint the whole picture, right? As opposed to just the hunt. Like I thought that would always be kind of like a cool approach to it. And it would help, I think, kind of like put hunting kind of like in a different light that maybe sometimes not, you know, commoners or non-hunters, you know, don't always get to see that side of it.
Yeah. I really enjoy seeing different, cultures in general, really, when you travel around. Like everywhere you go is a little different. Like before we started recording here, you gave away like your PA accent when you said tournament.
Like, right?
Yeah, it's like the only place in the country that you hear that, and I just love looking at those little details. And I think sometimes people think that I'm like joking too much or picking on like a Southern accent. It's like, no, I love it. I actually really love that difference in, you know, the way people talk down south versus, you know, in the Northeast versus, you know, Minnesota and Wisconsin. Like it's all different. And I just really enjoy seeing that. I also enjoy seeing how, you know, the masses and within the hunting community, how their strategy changes from place to place, because it's very different down south than it is in PA or Colorado or whatever. And it's, I don't know, that's super interesting to me. And that's why I like traveling, and again, trying to understand and relate to the people that live in all these areas. So hopefully at some point I could say that I've hunted, you know, everywhere that I want, but I'm really not even close, just within the lower 48.
Right. Yeah. I think the one thing I always kind of dig about going out of state and just going somewhere new is to the point of like what you said, was just kind of running into locals, right? Because I think a lot of times locals get a bad rap. You know what I mean? You know, I had, especially, you know, for me, like some of the nicest people I've met have been the people I've met in Kansas. Like I've never had more locals stop me, like while I'm walking along the road or I'm parked glassing or whatever, and ask me how I'm doing or whatever. And I'll be like, oh, you know, bow hunting. They're like, oh, okay, cool. Hey, there's a big one. They killed a 186-inch deer down here. If you go down a mile, turn a left, you know? And I'm like, oh, really? They're like, yeah, that's old Jim Bob's place. He'll let you hunt there. You know, it's like, I'm just like, that would never happen in Pennsylvania, you know, like never in a million years. And even, you know, when I hunted Iowa, for example, you know, cause I heard some stories just about like folks in Iowa, like, you know, not liking out of state. There's a whole lot, even though like the pressure's not crazy, but you know, it's just not their favorite thing. And, so I ran into this guy in the parking lot. We both were coming out of this piece of public at the same time. And he's like, hey, he's like, how you doing? I was like, oh, I'm good. He's like, you know, he's like, man, you're in here early, dude. He's like, your truck's here when I get here in the morning and it's still here whenever I come out. You know, he's like, where are you hunting back in there? And I kind of explained where I was at roughly. And we were kind of like almost like a mile apart from each other. And, his name's Corey. We actually still stay in touch to this day. And he actually was like, hey, I was like, I scouted over there. I was like, what do you think of that spot? And he's like, oh, there's some good deer over there. He's like, here, let me give you some pointers or whatever. And so he gave me some pointers, and like, it was probably like a quarter of a mile away from, like a piece of intel he gave me. I ended up killing the deer I killed in there.
That's sweet.
And so we still now to this day trade, you know, trail camera pictures. You know, I should draw, I think not this coming year, but the year after. He's like, well, come out, we'll set up cameras. I'll check them. I'll send you pictures, you know. And that's like a dude who's like born and raised there, has hunted that piece of public his entire life. He was just stoked someone else was willing to go out and like hoof it back in there like 2 miles to hunt it, like similar to how he does it. You know what I mean? And so you make those cool bonds. So it's like, you know, those in-staters are oftentimes, you know, good guys and don't deserve the bad rap that they sometimes get.
Yeah, I think that it's important, like even if you do have a bad experience, that's not everybody, and keeping that in mind is important. Because like, I mean, let's say on that Iowa trip, let's say I was just down the road and I had, you know, a weird run in or two, and you get in your head, it's like, oh, everybody from there's, you know, an ass. It's like, well, that's not necessarily true. And I think keeping that in mind is pretty important, because really there are good people everywhere.
Right.
Haven't been to as many places as we have been. There's a lot of good people out there. So I just think that's something that I always try to keep in mind. It's like, I'm friends with everybody, you know?
I'm friends with everyone until they give me a reason not to be.
Right, exactly. Which honestly rarely happens. So.
Exactly. Exactly. You just got to watch out for those people in Maine during turkey season. Wasn't that the like didn't Aaron have like like someone getting
dude.
buck wild on him?
We've had some weird encounters for sure. I mean,
you can't hunt as many places you guys have hunted and not have like weird stuff happen, you know.
Nothing too. I don't have anything that comes to mind too bad about like people trying to run us off or anything like.
Right.
Nothing too bad, but definitely weird encounters. And like, honestly, most of them have been in Iowa.
Right.
Just weird stuff. Like, for example, there's this one guy that like every time, and I don't hunt there anymore. I only film there. So like, I never hunted that area when I lived there. And I have not been a part, like filming any time where this has happened. But apparently there's this guy that like, owns the land next to the parking spot there. Mm-hmm. And he literally every time tries to like come up with some story as to why, like to try to, deter him and kind of like, make sure you don't go over on my ground. It's like, yeah, dude, like we get it. We know what your message is, but it's something that's consistently happened with Jake and Ted. And it's like, I don't know.
It's like, hey, man.
It's funny. I'm glad it's not me.
right. It's like, hey, man, I remember you from last year. Got it. Like,
yeah, or last week.
Last week. Yeah. Jeez.
It's crazy.
Yeah, it's there are some interesting places in Iowa, especially down in the southern area. You get some interesting folks for sure.
Yeah.
They're all good folks, man. It's like like I said, I've ran into like all the people I've run into for the most part have all been just super good people, no matter where I've been. The only place where I was a little kind of iffy, it was actually your home state. It was the only time.
Dude, I was literally about to say, was it Ohio?
Where I was like, it was my first trip to Ohio. And this is like years ago. And, I had heard horror stories from people, you know what I mean? About, parking at a spot that like someone else has hunted in the years past. And like, now you're in their spot, quote unquote. Right. And come out and your tires are slashed or whatever, I'm like, oh man, I do not want to deal with that, but I got to say, man, like I've never had a single problem. Actually, the DNR in Ohio that I ran into was like one of the nicest people that I've ever run into in my life.
That's awesome.
Like, we were hunting. It's a big woods piece that I know you've hunted in the past. And I was walking out, and actually I was with Chad Sylvester. He and I was walking out. And we met at the trucks, and a truck kind of slow rolls by, and they stop and get out, and they just, hey, see your license and stuff. And I'm like, sure, man. Give it to him. And he's like, oh, you guys are all good. And he's like, asked if we were having any luck or whatever. And then he started just dumping like intel on us. It's like, hey, they spotted a Boone and Crockett deer over here. Another guy that I talked to earlier was like a couple of 140s over here. And we're like,
you gotta love
that.
Really?
Where was that at again? Like what ridge was that? Like, but he's just a good old boy doing his job, man. Like he wasn't looking for any problems, and just sat and chopped it up with him for a minute.
Yeah, that's a lot of fun. We do that with the guy that's like local there in Iowa.
Yeah.
One time my friend Ben and I, we were about to go hunting, and he pulled up and looked at our licenses and talked to him for like an hour probably. It was like, all right, well, we better go hunting.
Yeah. Well, those guys too, man, they got a lot of intel, man. If you treat them right and you're nice to them, they'll give you the deets. You know what I mean? Because they know everything that's going on.
One time we met a guy, Jake and I, last year or two seasons ago, met a guy. He was, what he said was he was mowing for the state. So he was contracted to mow on this piece.
Right.
And we pulled down this pull off. We get down to the end of the road. There's a gate down there, and he's backed right up to the gate. And we pull up and kind of catch him off guard. And he's like, well, I mow all this, but be honest with you guys, you caught me talking to girls. He's like, just like, I don't know, texting girls or something. I don't know what he really meant. But anyway, he talked to us and ended up telling us, same deal. Like, yeah, I saw this over here, and I was mowing over here, and when I pulled in, I saw this buck, or when I started, this buck went out. It's like, all right. It's pretty sweet. But just love conversations like that. Honestly, like, hey, those are the things.
That's great about the deer, man, but what about them girls? Should have said that to him and see what his response was.
I had to laugh. He was an awesome character. It's funny too, because like you meet those people,
Yeah.
And those are the things that you talk about for years. I still know his first and last name right off the top of my head. It's just because Jake and I talk about it all the time.
Right.
And it's, same thing. We met guys down in Florida that were also hunting down there. And it's just like, still remember them by name. And I don't know, it's just it is fun to meet people, man. I like talking to everybody. And like I said, everybody's my friend, really.
Yeah. It's interesting that you say that because, like, when I think back to, like, the different hunting trips and stuff like that, like, whether a tag was filled or not, that's usually not the first thing I think of. Like, the first thing I actually think of is, like, either one, the people I was with, there, or the interesting people that I met while I was there, or the interesting thing that happened while I was there, not necessarily associated with the hunt itself.
Dude, I've been saying that same thing. I feel like it's something that, as far as creating videos goes, something I want to try to focus in on a little bit more is just capturing those moments. Because I feel like as the years have gone on, I got all these stories. And a lot of the stories, I can be like, yeah, go watch this video. Right. There's a lot of stories, too, that we just didn't film that part of the story. And, like, some of my favorite THP stories are, like, really funny or really just something off the wall. And, like, they're the type of stories I love telling at hunting camp. Like, I've told them a ton of times, and I really just need to write them down. But it's like, moving forward, I just want to try to film more of that. So it's like pretty much never stop rolling, and you're going to get what you need.
Right. Yeah. And then have a warehouse of hard drives.
Yeah, seriously. Yeah.
Nice, man.
My little drawer that's full right now is going to be, turned into a closet and then a warehouse or a shed and then a warehouse.
A shed and a warehouse. Yeah, exactly. Man, but speaking of hunting, dude, you're on the sidelines right now still, right? Like, there's no turkey hunting currently for you at the moment, right? That's kind of the deal.
Yeah, I'm like right on the edge of feeling like I could, but the problem is I'm afraid that I'm going to go and then I'm going to want to push it, and I'm kind of just trying to be patient because there's still a fair amount of turkey season left, and I mean, I want to make sure that I'm healthy. That way I can get back and hopefully be closer to 100% by the fall season, based off of like what I know from like physical therapists and doctors and surgeons and everything. Like, to be truly 100%, it's going to be a year from the surgery.
Yeah.
And that's pretty wild. But, I'm realizing too, like at 30% or whatever, I can still do quite a lot. It's just trying to get back to a point where I can go and actually enjoy it and not just be like hung up sitting at the road, but I would say I'm getting close. But yes, as of now, on the sidelines.
Right. So
long-winded way of saying that.
Right. So, like, I didn't even know at first that you had gotten hurt. Like, I saw like an Instagram post that you made riding like the paramedic sled down the side of a mountain, and I assumed it was in Colorado. And my first thought was like, oh, he took a hard fall, like, may have messed up his ankle or whatever. Just not something you could like get down the mountain and they're going to take him down or whatever. And I didn't realize it was like, oh no, like he tore his shit up. You know what I mean? Like, and so, like, what did you, was it blown like ACL? Like, what was
ACL?
Is that what it was?
Yep, ACL. And I had surgery that happened like February 4th, I think. 4th to 7th. I feel like I can't really remember the day very well, but then I had surgery on the 13th of March. So a little over a month out now. And it's definitely getting to that point where it's feeling more normal. I mean, it's looking more normal. It still feels pretty crazy, but I feel like it's now back to like where it was after the injury. Because like honestly, after the injury is like bad initially, but then once the swelling and stuff kind of cools off, I was pretty capable of moving around a fair amount still. Like by the end, right before the surgery, I could, on flat ground on like the sidewalk, I could walk endlessly again. I mean,
right,
as long as I wasn't doing anything too erratic, like running or hiking,
changing direction or whatever.
Yeah. I mean, that's the risk there. But as far as just like straight walking, I was getting back to that. And now I'm not quite there yet, but able to walk like around the park a little bit, or like I walked one, I think Whitney said 1.2 miles we walked the other night.
Right.
It's like at the end of that I'm pretty tired still, and it's like pretty easy walk. It swells up a little bit, but for the most part I got all that under control, and I feel like now it's kind of that just staying consistent with the PT, and my hope is that it'll be like nothing even happened here, you know, a year from now.
Yeah, most folks that I know that's happened to, it's like that knee is usually the better knee anymore. You know what I mean? Like where it's like it's better than the real one at that point.
I can totally see it. I mean, also just alone, I'm certainly no doctor, but it's like you sit and wonder, like how much abuse is my left leg taking now because I'm compensating so much. It's
that's always kind of the risk, right? That's like the one thing you always hear with athletes. Like if you know, like a football player, for example, it's like usually like the right one goes or whatever one goes. It's like you could almost like mark it down, like something on the left side the following year is going to go, whether it's like an ACL, an Achilles, a hamstring, like something, just because you're overcompensated. You know,
the one thing that I've done that I'm hopeful at least helps a little is everything that I do for PT with my right side, I do it with my left side, like the stretching, the just simple exercises to get my strength back. And like my guess is this leg's not going to get like so far ahead of this leg that it doesn't just catch right back up. It's like these aren't hard exercises necessarily, but hoping that just staying flexible is a big part of hunting for me. So like I try to stay focused on that and try to keep working hard to keep that up, because I don't want to go back into it and then just be all stiff. And like, obviously I'm going to be not as fast or quick to get up the hill or down the hill, but I don't want it to be like not able to get into the positions that I want to. So,
Yeah. And I think that stuff will come back pretty quickly to you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that, like, you know, your ability to move the way you want to move and things like that. Like I've never had an injury like that. Like I've had a surgery before, but not like that. And it's almost like your legs will be willing before your mind will be willing to take the risk. Put it that way, I guess. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I've already noticed that a little bit when like the brace is on, I feel invincible. But as soon as that brace comes off, I'm like, you know, just because it's like, then all of a sudden you really do feel how wobbly it is, or like just how much that the brace actually like holds your muscle to where like, I don't know, just it's totally supporting your leg. And it's like next week that comes off, like I'm not wearing the brace next week. And I'm like, mentally that's going to be a new challenge.
Right. It's crazy because, like, you know, the ACL is like the big one, right? Like that's like there's guys, like there's a guy at the gym that I do jiu-jitsu with. He doesn't have I guess an MCL, I think is what it is. Like he doesn't have one. Like he tore it in college wrestling and never got it repaired or whatever. And so someone had him in a heel hook like 2 weeks ago, and I heard a pop, like, and he grabbed his knee, and he was just like. He just kind of laughed and rolled over. He's like, oh, at least he's like, I don't have an MCL on that one. He's like, so it should be good. It just got sore for like a couple of days, and he was like, fine. He just like kept plowing through. But for like a week, it was wobbly, so he wouldn't do anything standing up. It was like he would only work like on the ground, and that was it, you know. And I'm like, dude, you might want to go get that looked at, because that was a loud pop. Like I heard that all the way across the room. You know, it's like he's like, no, it'll be good. And I'm just like, dude, you're a meathead. Like
that's and that's the thing. It's like before the surgery. I mean, I'll be honest, it got to that point where it's like, well, I can walk, and it's like, give it another couple of weeks, it's like, I'm probably going to be able to go back up hills. It's like, I realized why you can get away with that. Yeah. I never had realized that before. I'd heard of people doing it, and you're just like, oh, no way. But like, it made me understand that a little bit more, because it's like, I could see where somebody would just be like, no, I'm not getting surgery. Because like, it never really was a realistic thing for me, I don't think. Like, I always knew I was going to get surgery, but every single day leading up to it, I thought, do I really need this?
Yeah.
Because, you know, you get back to that point again where you're like, well, I can go hunting. I could have, you know, could have a hell of a lot better than I can right now. And I think that was the mental hurdle, is like, you know, I'm going to just I'm getting better, and then I'm just like cut back into it and then go backwards for a long period of time, and it's just
right. But it's
whatever though.
Even making decisions like when you're hunting about whether you're going to go over that next hill or whatever, right? It's like, does that become like, if you don't get the surgery, right? Like, does it become the excuse then that you start to use?
Maybe
for not, you know what I mean? Because that's like your mind starts to play tricks on you a little bit, right? It's like,
dude, it was weird. So I don't know. I don't know. I guess I don't really care. I did it, and I'm happy with the decision that I made. But every season, I went back and hung out with my friends Ben and Keith in the off season, and this injury had happened, and we usually go scouting around, and I was like, well, we're just gonna have to not do it, you know, we're just gonna have to do something else. And our buddy Larry has a property, and we went over there instead and kind of helped on some projects. And it's 80 acres, so it's like, and it's got trails and stuff, so it's like I can walk on it. Well, after doing that a couple of days, it actually like made me feel even better and more confident in walking. So this is like 2 weeks before the surgery. And then we left Larry's for the weekend. It was Monday, and I was like, you know, anything I got to do for work, I'm going to take the day off, and I'm going to go scouting. I'm just going to go until it hurts, you know, if it hurts too much, whatever, I'm going to just stop. And I went to all the places that I probably would have, you know, hunting. And it's like, I ended up probably doing 6 to 7 miles that day. Nothing insane, but just like with a torn ACL, it puts into perspective how you could just get away with it. So it's like, I think the biggest risk would just be that compensating for the other leg, or when you don't have that ACL, you're more likely to just tear something else up. So it's like, you could just ultimately set yourself back more. So it's like, cut the losses, miss part of season, and hopefully be 100% sooner than later. And just it's just part of life. I mean, the other thing that I think about is like, hunting is a lifelong game, where like playing a sport is a lot different. Like, you miss a year when you're in high school, or even, middle school or college, whatever,
pro,
but
whatever it is. Yeah.
Whatever, you miss a year, it's like, that's a lot. That's a big percentage of your season or of your career. With hunting, missing a month or two or whatever of turkey season is like not that big. It's not as big of a percentage, I suppose, because hopefully I got, assuming that I continue on here for at least a handful of years, I got some more time left.
Right. Yeah. Well, everyone hopes, right? It's like it's interesting, man, because like, I'm listening to you kind of, explain like how you felt like you were moving around, you were in the woods, you went to all the places, right? And then in the back of my mind, I go, okay, but you're by yourself and you just killed a buck.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Now what are you doing? You know what I mean? Like that's the part, right? Where it's like, there's like this one part of the hunt that you can still manage to get through, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, I wouldn't be able to elk hunt like that.
I was going to say like that terrain's different.
The thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like being turkey hunting, especially like where they were starting, Mississippi, it's generally much flatter than really a lot of stuff that we hunt. It's like, if you start there and then, I don't know, just stay on the ridge tops from you could pull off a lot of turkey hunting, but in the long run, it's like, I want to get, honestly, dude, here's a big part of it is I want to make sure that I'm able to go elk hunting. And the reason is when you go back to that percentage thing, it's like you look at my hunting career, it's like I've only elk hunted a little bit and I've turkey hunted a whole lot. So, I love all hunting. It doesn't really matter what it is, but, right now I would say my thing that I'm hungriest for is just learning more about elk, just because I have the least amount of experience in that.
Right. Yeah. I think when you mentioned the long game, like, so it was maybe 2 years ago, like I was never a big, like I worked out and stuff like that, but I wasn't and I always ate pretty well and things like that, but I didn't do a lot of like body maintenance, if you will. Like I did yoga and stuff like that, but like I never had like a biomechanical kind of like work up on my body of like how I carry my weight and things like that. And so I started seeing a chiropractor because I really never went to one very often and stuff like that. and he did like a whole kind of scan of my body to understand like how I carry my weight, how my hips are kind of formed and things like that. And he asked me what my goals were. And I said, my goal was like, I'll do whatever you need me to do. I'll show up as often as you need me to show up, to take care of my body. All I want as far as a goal is I want to be able to hunt the way I like to hunt for as long as I can. Yeah. I was like, that's it. You know what I mean? I was like, cause I like hard hunts. I like grinds. I like going to places that are tough. I was like, and when I'm older, if I have to transition and buy a back 40 somewhere, because that's what my body will allow me to do just to continue to hunt, then I'll do that. I was like, but I want to keep that off in my horizon for as long as I possibly can, and he was like, okay, so a lot of the stuff that I do is with the intent, it's expanded beyond hunting, but like the focus was always like hunt the way I like to hunt for as long as I can. And now as I've gotten older, maybe a little bit more perspective is I want to live well for as long as I can in all facets. So hunting being part of it, family being part of it, hanging with friends being part of it, being available for my wife and stuff like that. Not just physically, like in the physical form, but like whenever you're physically right, you're mentally right, you're emotionally right. Like it all works together. You know what I mean? It's like,
yeah, for sure.
All those pieces are intertwined. And so that was really my goal. And so when you said the long game, man, like I was like, hell yes. Like that's the jam. You know what I mean? It's like, and like people will always say, it's like, well, you don't need to be super fit to whitetail hunt. It's like, no, I get it. But like, living well should be important to you. And if hunting's that important to you, then you want to live well as long as you can.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, man. And I think that you don't have to be, in good shape at all to be a hunter. And I'm definitely not going to sit here and say like that's super important for everybody. Like you can also, you can be way out of shape and be a really good basketball player still because where your teammates are and you're really good at, assisting, making those passes. Like, I think that's absolutely possible. Yep. But I just, I feel better in general, like you said, if I take care of myself, and ultimately it makes those hunts a lot more fun. Like just even a run of the mill, relatively flat ground turkey hunt, it's like, I sure enjoy it more when it's easy and like, it just makes those, I don't know, getting into position and, whether you're climbing trees or you're crawling on the ground or you're, walking in a squat, making a stalk. It's like, when you can do all that stuff with ease, it just makes it easier. And then you ultimately perform better. And like you said too, it's not just hunting. It's an easy focus if that's your thing. Yeah. But like in general, like life's just a lot easier, and it's fun to just be a kid all the time too. Like really, like if you're in good shape, you feel like a kid. At least I do. That's like my favorite part about being, as I've gotten back into better shape. It's like, it's just fun to be a kid and just be able to run around, and
it's fun to not get tired. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like
exactly.
That's the thing. It's like, whenever you can just go and go and go, and that you don't have the limitation of that. And it's like, I can have as much fun as I want to have. And that's how I look at it. It's like, not that there's an end goal of like, well, I can hunt this long. It's like, no, I can go until I just don't want to go anymore. It's like, there's not a physical limitation that shuts me off. It's like, which is, is the thing that I think that I probably focus on more than anything is that aspect of it, at least for hunting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And like, I guess one thing that I would note is that I also know what it's like to be very out of shape. Like when I was in college, I was drinking and eating just like shit, man, like treating my body so bad. Yeah. And, it just got to a point where it's like, okay, like all of a sudden, like that happens quick too, where it's like, oh, I don't really care. And like, you don't care at first. And then all of a sudden you're like, wait, like I remember walking out of the woods one time with a tree stand on my back, my lower back hurting so bad. And I was like, dude, you're like 21 or 2. It's like, and I mean, since then it's like, I've changed a lot of things, but I know what it felt like to be on the other end of it too. So like not that long ago. So I just think that that's just because I don't want it to sound like it's like, well, you've never like, well, yeah, hell, you don't even know what it's like to be out of shape. It's like, yeah, I definitely do. Cause like at that time I was I've been at times I've been 60 pounds below what I was in college, which is freaking wild.
Yeah, that's crazy, man. That's like a quarter
Pretty
of a
gross,
person.
too.
That's just like half of like a third of a person. It's like, that's crazy. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I really learned a lot from doing that, though. Really. It's like, all of a sudden, sorry, I got my cord all hung up.
Yeah, you're good.
I learned a lot from being that way, though. Like, it helped me realize what I want to change and like how easy. And I mean, it's easy to go down that road, I think. Like, society tells you, like, hey, here's all this good food and like whatever. It's like,
according to the
easy to give in.
Whoever, I forget who it was. I forget. Some health institute of some sort, like Cheerios or Lucky Charms was healthier than like a steak, like or something like. So it's like that kind of stuff. You know what I mean? It's like we're enticing you and suggesting to you that these poor choices are good, and we're saying keep making them, keep making them. No, you're making good choices. It's like, no, you're not. But they're going to continue to tell you that because they have some form of incentive to tell you that.
Yeah, and just like even. I look back on like what I believed to be healthy eating when I was like, living in my parents' house and then in college and then, after college and then what I see now and it's just like, or what I'm doing now. And like, I don't know, just how much that has changed too, based off of just different resources and stuff. And it's pretty wild.
Yeah, man.
Really. Yeah, I don't know.
Knowledge is power. It's like, because I'm the same way, man. It's like I didn't know, I grew up in a small town in Pennsylvania. It's like where, there weren't, and this is also like, I'm a little older than you. So, this is like late 80s, early 90s. And it's like there was no such thing as like a health food store necessarily, at least where I lived. You know what I mean? And so it was whatever was at the grocery store and whatever was at the restaurants that were like around you or whatever. And like, so your concept of like what good food was like askew outside of like my grandfather always had like a huge garden and stuff like that. And so we, during the summer, it's like we would have fresh vegetables and stuff like that, but that would only last but for so long, and both parents working, like stuff like that. So it's like, it was a lot of processed foods and things like that. But I thought like, oh, like, yeah, this thing's like low fat. It's gotta be good, where it's like, reality is like, it was like the worst possible thing for you. You know what I mean? Like, cause I had so much like, sugar and just like processed and just like was bad for you in general. It's like, you might as well like ate the cheeseburger from like the fast food joint. It would have been better for you. You know what I mean? But
yeah, well, I guess for me, a big part of it and like what I grew up around and went to college around and was the drinking thing, man.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
I just felt like by the time I was out of high school and I got into that scene, it's just like so accepted to like just get trashed all the time. Like
overindulge all the time. Yeah.
Yeah. And like really the only dangers I ever really remember, sure there was like your dare class, but I don't really remember any of that. But what I remember is like, well, just don't drink and drive. That's like the only harm you ever hear about. Otherwise, like, yeah, everybody's overindulgent. And like,
right.
I think for me personally, it just became such a bad habit of like, a lack of self-control. Like, it's like just overdoing it a lot. And like, have not drank for 3 years at this point. So,
oh, wow.
Yeah,
right
made
on.
A big change on that. But like, and this is not to say that I'm against drinking. If you're listening to me talk about this, the last thing I want you to think about me is that I care that you drink. Absolutely not. But for me personally, like, I'm all for it. I think it's a good thing, but I couldn't control it. And I think that's a big thing too. And like being honest with myself about that, like, feels good.
Yeah.
Like,
100%.
Okay, Zach, like, you've been
Good
thinking
choice.
it for a while. Now it's time to just like commit to that. Like,
right.
You like to drink too much.
Right. I like too much party. You know what I mean? Yeah, exactly.
Yes, dude. Yes.
No, I hear you there, man. Because being in a band in my former life is what I did for like a long time, and so it was just overindulgence all the time to the max. Like, it was almost like a competition, like unstated competition of like who's going to be the most out of control on this trip or this day or whatever. And I did a similar thing where it's like I just stopped like cold turkey, like actually, because at the time I smoked too, and and so I stopped drinking, I stopped smoking, I stopped drinking caffeine, I stopped like eating bad food like all at once. It put my body into shock. Actually, I ended up in the hospital, because I stopped all my vices all at one time. You know what I mean? Literally, whenever I went to the doctor, and he was like, "So what's going on?" And I told him what I did. He just like looked at me. He's like, "Dude, are you crazy?" He's like, "Go like outside, smoke a cigarette, have a cheeseburger or something." He was like, "You got to give your body something back." And I was just like, dude, if I don't stop all of them, I won't stop any of them. You know what I mean? I was like, so I just cut it all off. And I went like a little over a year, like a year and a half or something like that, without having like a drink at all. Mm-hmm. And then slowly but surely I would have like a glass of wine once in a while and stuff like that. And now it's like I'm to the point where, I think since the last, and I'll say it for you, last tournament I had, I'll say instead of tournament, the last, I didn't drink leading up to that like at all. And I think I've had like one or two drinks like since that tournament, which was like 2-ish months ago. And I have another one like on Saturday. It's like, I think I had 2 drinks like, within like probably the past like 3 or 4 months or whatever, and it's only because like I have better cardio when I'm not and stuff like that. And I feel better and I train better and stuff like that. And so I get more out of training.
I think too, it's something that I've heard other people say, like they can at some point revisit it. So it's like, I would never say either that I would never do it again. I just think I need probably still a fair amount of time, just because I just know my tendencies, and it's like,
that's just it. Like, you have to be honest with yourself. You know what I mean? It's like, and that's for the while and it really became like when I introduced other things that, I don't want to say took the place of it, but like where my focus was like that I was really excited about something, and that having too many drinks was going to take away from it, then I wouldn't. You know what I mean? Like, because that was like that was something I was focused on that I was really excited about. I didn't want to take away from it. And so that was kind of how, and then it just kind of ultimately like, there's probably someone out there who's listening who has been on the wagon much, longer than that, and it's like a lifestyle for them. That maybe is telling me, thinking that I'm full of shit, thinking that I can control it, you know what I mean? But it's like, at this point now, it's like, I really don't care to drink that often. Like, I'm a bourbon guy, so I will enjoy like a good bourbon and like a cigar.
Me too.
Like, that's the thing that I will enjoy, is like a nice glass of bourbon and a good cigar by my fire outside. And I'll do that like once a month, and that's kind of like my jam.
It's funny. It's funny because I feel like I'm still the type of guy, like, and maybe it'll change, but I'm still the type of guy that it's like, I really believe that, get one beer and I would just like get a couple sips and then see ya. And
see, that's for me, beer is the thing for me. Like, if it's bourbon, like I can have like 1 or 2, have a cigar and like, and I'm good. It's like, it's more the experience. Beer, on the other hand, like that, I was just like, once I have that first taste, like a good IPA, I'm like, oh, like it's all over. You know what I mean? It's like, but,
and you feel that, you just feel it set in. It's a good feeling. I like I like those things. I also used to, like you said, you smoked. I also used to chew, and like, it's like, that's the same deal. That was like a long time I was doing that. And it's just like, but I stopped that before I stopped drinking. And then it's like, then you stop drinking afterwards. And it's like, I just probably am better off without those things, kind of, because they also, for me at least, it started to also just drive me crazy because I was pissed that I was doing it still. Like, at a certain point, it's like, I just, don't want to be doing this anymore, Yeah,
it's like, you just know,
like you said, it's getting in the way of other things,
Right. But I mean, circling back to like getting in the way, so because everyone's like,
we just took a total change in the podcast route.
Yeah, we did. People were like, man, what happened? I just walked into like a 12-step program here all of a sudden, like. Yeah, but no, I want to get back to like, being on the sideline and stuff like that, because like people who know you had a chance to talk to you, and it comes through on like the videos and stuff you guys do. It's like, you're an optimistic dude. You know what I mean? You're one of the more like upbeat people that I've probably ever met. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know that I've ever heard of or have seen you not be having a good time, no matter like what the situation, except maybe last year when you about got your truck stuck or about wrecked your truck in that snowy situation. Like, that was maybe the only time on video that I saw you get like a little unhinged. You know what I mean? But, have you found like a silver lining, like in this injury, even though it's a bummer, it sucks, like what is the silver lining? Like if you had to like think about like, hey, I'm going to have some gratitude for like where I'm at, what is the positive thing that you can take out of this?
Oh, I mean, I think there's tons of positives. First thing I do want to mention though is I think one of the things that's unique about me is while yes, hunting and stuff, I'm super optimistic. So I also can like go from here to here to here really quick. Like, for example, one of the videos that just cracks me up because I know what happened internally was last season we were in South Dakota. I believe it was last season, 2 seasons ago. Doesn't matter. And Keith and I made a stalk on a buck. And, like, the shot felt really good, and it really I just shot a little low. I think I had to kind of guess on the range, like the last few yards, and it was pretty far. So those last few yards mattered, and it felt good, looked good. Arrow flight felt good, and I turned to Keith and I'm smiling real big, and I'm like, dude, that was awesome. Like, missed him, and it's like, it's so hilarious. But like, you give that 2 hours and we're about on the boat, and like, I'm going to have my moment where I'm like, son of a bitch, like, right. And I'm, like mad about it. And I'm like, and then I have like my little moment, and then I start laughing about something else. It's just, right. It's definitely a thing that changes. So like, I certainly have my moments, but I would say overall, I try to keep the mood optimistic and having fun and energetic. Right. But, with this injury too, that's happening. Like for sure, I have my days where like yesterday I was editing podcasts and recording podcasts and was up, first thing in the morning doing that. And then I stayed up late doing it. And it's like, by the end of the day, I'm kind of just grumpy. I'm like, I just want to go hunt with my friends. And like, but then I kind of relax a little bit and try, end up feeling a little bit better by the end of the night. But I have really good days, have really bad days.
Right.
So I guess keep that in mind. But then the thing that I'm excited about is it's given me a chance to reflect on like hunting strategy, hunting goals, and also like from a content perspective has been a big thing for me. Like I have a lot of inspiration right now, and it's something that just is really the main topic of my conversations right now. Is like my excitement to get back into creating videos that I like making and watching, and are just real life hunting, the real memory that I have, and just trying to capture that. And like we talked about it there a little bit at the beginning with meeting the characters and trying to film more of those experiences. And that's exactly what my interest is. And I feel like I have more of a vision to do that moving forward. And I don't think I would have done that had I not been injured, because I've had more time to like review content that we've made, look at what we're currently doing, look at other content pieces, hunting related, non-hunting related. And as much as those things aren't my favorite thing to do necessarily, it's really helped get the creative juices flowing. So it's like,
right.
And also, along the lines of hunting too, there's obviously a lot of just reflection on that, and like little strategy details, from little strategy details to like places that I want to tackle, and like what really is important to me.
Yeah. I mean, I think sometimes forced reflection is good, right? Because sometimes we won't take the time ourselves to do it. I mean, I think we academically know that it's important. You know what I mean? Like when you talk to people who are just kind of well-rounded, that observe well and stuff like that. If you ask them academically, like, hey man, is it good to just like call a timeout sometimes and like step back and watch? Because we all, like, if you watch football, it's like what happens, like the starting quarterback gets hurt, he sits out for 3 or 4 weeks, comes back, so he's like a different player because he's got a different perspective, got a different view, right? And it helped how he saw the game. You know what I mean? Even though we know that that's like what helps people, it's like we're reluctant to force ourselves to do it because we have fear that we're going to miss out on something. You know what I mean? It's like, but the actual enrichment like comes from like knowledge and skill acquisition, and it's really hard to do that whenever you're just running like through I don't want to say through the motions, but through the actions of actually hunting. You know what I mean? It's like, at least for me, it's like I need time to like think about things after I've seen them. You know what I mean? Like to start to put them in play. Like for me, the big thing that I'm toying with this year, and if I hadn't kind of like had some different experiences this past year, it's like, I don't know that I would be toying with it, but it's like before you and I jumped on here, it's like I was outside shooting my recurve because I'm toying with the idea of like using a recurve this year. The reason being is because before we started recording, we were talking about like some changes that I'm making about trying to more so connect like that primal aspect of my life in all areas. Like that thing became like the honest thing to me where I was like, I've thought about it for probably like the past 3 seasons. I think I want to do that because it just makes it's more connected to me. I feel like I'm more interested in things that are just more connected to me. And, you know, like I always kind of academically understood why you like the open country and spotting and stalking. And it wasn't until like, and I've hunted elk and stuff, and I got that feeling a little bit from like elk and mule deer hunting, but it wasn't until I went to Kansas and was chasing whitetails in the open plains where I was like, oh my God, I want to do this and nothing but this. And I want to do it with traditional archer equipment. You know what I mean? Like that was like the end all be all for me would be to be in the plains, killing whitetails with a traditional bow. And so, you know, but I wouldn't have made that leap or started making that leap if I didn't have some time and like opportunity to kind of like think about my perspective and like, what am I in it for? Like, what do I want to get out of this? You know what I mean? And then when it comes down to it, it's that primal kind of connection. And the only way I can get more of that is to become more like rudimentary, if you will, like in my approach.
Yeah. I feel like the only thing that, different, I think, or not the only thing, but the thing that jumps out to me that's different about like a goal of mine is just, I love the plains, but I also feel like there's something that happens to me too in timber, you know, like, and again, having time to reflect on this, it's like if I could go turkey hunt one place, where would it be? It's just like, throw me in the Eastern Hills, man. That's where like I love to be. But yeah, I do think the recurve thing though is super cool and something that like Do you ever toy with the idea? Like, yeah, oh yeah, like, yes. I think at some point it has to happen. And the hang up right now, and total excuse, I know, is that I just don't live in a place where I can shoot it often enough. For me, it's a commitment to go somewhere to shoot it, and I got to be able to shoot it, like, you know, while I'm cooking lunch, or when, you know, I'm taking a break at the end of the day, you know, after work or whatever, or first thing in the morning. It's just got to be something I can do a time or 2 or 3 a day, and like, I'm just not in a spot right now where we rent, so like I don't have a place where I can just, you know,
walk out the back door and let it rip. Yeah.
And like, there's I mean, even the very closest places, it's just such a commitment to like get in the vehicle and drive somewhere. For me, at least, it is. I'm also, you know, I go from one extreme of driving all the time to like literally just in this house for the most part.
Right. Right. Yeah. I mean, it's, you know, fortunately, it's like I have a backyard where I can shoot, you know, even when I'm shooting my compound, it's like I can get about 54 yards, you know, in the backyard. And I was shooting the recurve today at like 20 yards, and I was on target, which, you know, I don't even have like, my buddies, it's an old, like, I think it's called a Hunter Hoat, I think is what it's called, if I'm not mistaken. It's like a mass-produced, like, recurve. It was an old boat my dad had hanging in his garage and gave it to me. And it's 60 pounds, so it's a beast. You know, it's like, it's a lot, you know. Yeah, I'm not a big dude, you know. I'm 5'9", $160, you know what I mean? So, and so I was just messaging with some of my buddies that shoot traditional, and they were like, hey, just shoot that, get comfortable with, like, how it functions. Like, once you feel good about it, you know, my one buddy has a bow. He's like, I'll just give you one. You know, he's like, we'll get together, we'll tune you an arrow, get you kind of dialed in, and then it'll become like a lot easier. But just like start playing around with it. And so I'm shooting at like 20 yards. I'm at least on target, and I'm like, I didn't even know that would happen. Like, you know what I mean? I was like, I hope my fence holds up. What's that?
It'll come quick though. I feel like it's one of those things. Like, at least the way that I shoot a recurve, it's like so instinctive. There's just something about like yeah, pull the string and arrows facing in this direction at this, this is so instinctive. And like, I think that once that starts to fall into place, I'm like, I don't really, now this is also a very limited experience, and I'm by no means like a master recurve shooter, so I don't want to, but it's like, to me, I just enjoy that instinctive side of it so much that like, sometimes I get intimidated by like the people that want to get real technical with it, where I'm like, man, I just want to like, get a consistent anchor point and try to get my release and grip better and just kind of go with that, because I think that's what's so cool about it is like compound is so like, there's so many variables I feel like with compound that are like, you have to just line it all up and it's this perfect machine, where like with the recurve, it's still the same thing. You still have to have a lot of consistency there, but like, there's just some, like, you're not lining up everything in a pin to aim. It's just like,
there's 100 ways to skin
almost.
the cat with like a recurve, or like with traditional equipment. I almost feel like, you know what I mean? Like where whatever it is that you can, I almost feel like, at least what I've kind of somewhat come to understand is like, whatever it is that you can do and do consistently, as long as you do that thing, and you have your rig set up to accommodate that thing, you'll be good. You know what I mean? It's like, and even just playing around with like little things, like while I was out in the backyard, it's like, I don't do great aiming. Like I suck when I aim. If I just look at the spot I want to hit and let it rip, I'm way more consistent, and that my dad, that's how he taught me how to shoot a recurve originally, was like, when he put it in my hand the first time, he was just like, hey, you know how you throw a baseball from third to first? I'm like, yep. He's like, throw the arrow from third to first. You know what I mean? He's like, just look where you want to hit, pull it back, and just watch the spot you want to hit, and your arrow will land there. And I'm like, well, man, you are crazy. Like, I'm like, there's no way that's going to happen. And I'll be damned if it doesn't happen. You know what I mean? Like, I know there's a lot more that goes into it than that, but like at the base level, that's how he started teaching me how to shoot a recurve. And so anytime I've ever picked one up, that's how I shot it. I know some guys will aim like a fletching, or they'll use like the head of the broadhead, like it's like, and I just don't know if that's something that I would.
Well, yeah, I feel like it's one of these things too. It's like, I hate to say too much about it, because at the end of the day, I have not shot it enough to say like, I'm ready to go hunting now. Right. I've got to points like at the peak of shooting it where it's like, my aiming was consistent enough, but like I didn't even take it to the next step of like having a broadhead setup or anything like that. So there's still a lot for me to learn. So but I guess the one thing that I think that's really cool about it is that I think it actually does have some advantages as far as like ground hunting stuff goes. There's just, the movements are so subtle and smooth, where, movement is, in deer hunting especially, is like your number one thing you got to time correctly. And I think that with that, minimal movement and just, I don't know, close range stuff too, it's like you're actually dealing with a lot of close range stuff, where when you got a compound and you got to get a compound drawn, and there's so much motion in that, you got to then get it all upright and sit up, where like something about that, like
sneak
positioning. Yeah, you could just kind of hide a little bit differently with it. So that fascinates me, and I think that's what makes me want to do it. It's just the actual function of it seems like, if you were confident in the shooting part of it, which is the part that I'm not ready for, I haven't committed the time for, I think the use of it in a fair amount of situations would be, really good in a lot of like ground hunting stuff.
Yeah. So Kansas is the thing that like tripped my trigger for it, was just like all the ground hunting out there. 'Cause it's like, I love hunting those wide open places like that. And I've been there the past 2 years, and I've had 3 deer that I've been within 15 to 20 yards of, like the past 2 seasons, and just could not get a shot off. The one I got winded, and I was at full draw and I got winded. But this past year there was one, and I had it like 18 yards in where I was set up. It's like I had to draw and get up over top of like these small locust saplings, like, 'cause I was seated. And if he stayed to my left, like I had a clean shot, but if he kind of busted to his left, like he got in front of these saplings, I'd have to stand up and get drawn over top of them. And it was that hunt where I was like, man, if I had a recurve, I could have shot it on an angle and would have been just a lot simpler. Like, I mean, Jared Scheffler makes it look real easy, shooting like completely like horizontal, you know what I mean? Where I'm like, I don't know that I'd ever be on that level, but just giving you the opportunity to have different angled shots in those areas where you're in close quarters and you can't move a lot. Cause the whole thing that busted me in that one was the fact that I had to make that big motion to get drawn. Cause as soon as I got drawn back, like my arrow, as I drew, the broadhead caught like a small twig off of one of those saplings and bounced, and he heard it and snapped his head around. And that was it. Like I literally needed like 2 more seconds.
That's I talk a lot about hunting and hunting strategy. And to me, there's endless topics when you start getting into the nitty gritty of ground hunting. And one of which, and like the main one that we never talk about enough, is drawing and being prepared to draw, and like how important that is. Like when I'm going through the woods, the number one priority that I always have is knowing where I can get to draw my bow. If I can't right here, where can I get to where I can do that? Second priority is cover. Or I guess second priority would be wind or cover, but kind of play in the same mentality or part of my brain, I guess. It's
right.
But drawing is number one, because a deer can even hit your wind if you're in position and not moving, and you still might get a shot off in some situations. You might stand there and give you a chance, but it's like if you're all jammed up in a ground setup, or you just didn't push through that brush before you stopped to listen, all of a sudden you're caught on something, or your arrow gets caught on something. And like, as I've done it more and more, I feel like that to me is like the hardest part of ground hunting, because like at the end of the day, everybody can just lay flat on the ground and not get spotted by a deer if you're not moving.
Right. Right.
But like, can you get the damn bow drawn? And like, it's hard. And I think it's just, that's some stuff I situationally, it's a really interesting topic that I feel like you could really get in real in depth with.
Yeah, those hunts in Kansas have probably been like the most mentally challenging for me, because I'm from an area where I don't hunt a lot from the ground. I do some in PA, but not a lot. I would say out of every 10 hunts I have in PA, I might have one on the ground. And then I go out there, and I specifically go to a place where there are no trees, so the chance of getting in a tree is zero. So every hunt's on the ground. It's glassing, spotting, stalking, or watching what he's wanting to do, and then trying to cut him off like the next morning or whatever the case is. So those have been a huge learning curve for me, right? And so I try to keep like a positive kind of, mental focus, and know that it's going to be hard. You know what I mean? Know that I'm going to make mistakes, and try not to make them twice. You know what I mean? Like, and it's hard because like, when I got lucky, I got that tag 2 years in a row, and most of the time you're only going to get that tag probably every other year. And so you have to wait like a whole 24 months to try to get back to do it again, and it's like, and so the stakes are high, you know what I mean? And so, so for me, that was like a really kind of challenging hunt from a mental standpoint. But I know like elk hunting is challenging in a different way. And I saw you made a post at one point, and like I wrote this down because I thought it was interesting. Like, because I saw you mention this. You said the mental and physical challenges of elk hunting help you grow as a person, right? Not just as a hunter, but they help you grow as a person. And like that to me is like when I saw that, it was just like, it really kind of like resonated with me, because to me, it's like, I think I start looking at the challenges that I have, whether it's in hunting or whether it's in other areas, as like growth opportunities. And maybe it's like the getting older, right? Where it's like, you see them as like chances and not just like hurdles per se. Mm-hmm. And so like, how has elk hunting helped you grow as a person? Like, what did you mean by that?
Well, what I meant by it is several things. I think for one, when you're successful elk hunting, there's so many emotions, and you go through all these different emotions, and it really is like, it's just so stupid and cliche as it is, like this roller coaster where like you're super pumped, and then you're tired, and then you're all of a sudden realizing that the pack out's harder than what you think, and it's taking longer than what you think. You have a lot of time to reflect on things. And I feel like it also hunting in that style where you're with people, it's like you have to keep this team attitude the whole time, and just how important that is. And then you take that from, your little circle, which is your family while you're out there, and then take that back to your family when you're at home or, at work or whatever. Just try to keep, it really helps you become, I guess if you allow it to, a good, a good teammate. I think that's one of the things that I take away the most from elk hunting, and I'm the proudest of when I think of our elk hunts, is it's not anybody's elk hunt. That was the team's elk hunt.
Right.
And we've also done a lot of group hunting with muzzleloaders the last several years. The same feeling I get with that is it's a team. So I just really like that, man. I've really like that. I feel like when I come out of it, it's you have time to reflect and think about a lot of things. You become a better teammate, but then the last thing that I guess comes to mind is just overcoming things that you maybe thought were impossible. Because I do a lot of the kind of planning and strategy of where we're gonna go and stuff, and I'll just be completely honest, I wouldn't tell my buddies this every time, but I think they probably know I'm setting the bar real out there. Right. It's a really weird strategy. We're gonna work hard to get to some of these places that we go to, and that can look a lot of different ways, but I just like doing that. Then you get done with it and you're like, dude, we just did that. The pack outs, some of the pack outs that we've had, I could tell you, but it's just it doesn't even seem real, or it's just no way. It's but I know what happened out there, and I also know how my team stuck together and pushed through that crazy stuff with me, and I love that, and I love them for it too, and that's just special, man. It really is.
There's a bond through suck that it can only ever be made through suck. You know what I mean? And that's the truth. And I wrote down, as you were talking, because it made me think. It's a little bit about what we were talking about before we even started recording a little bit when we were having our kind of pre-chat. But what I wrote down was forced presence. Adversity forces you to be so present because the adversity is so heavy. Especially when you're talking about pack out or whatever, or climbing, elevation, that's false summit after false summit. You know what I mean? It's because you can either crumble in it because you can't take the not knowing, or you can it will force you just to be present to get through it, to where you just recognize this is where I'm at. It's not the top of the mountain that I thought it was. We got to continue to go. I'm going to be aware that I'm not cool with it. I'm not happy about it, but we're just going to pick up our packs and we're going to keep walking. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
it's
and it's the teammate aspect of it too, is you start to see how your buddy is maybe having a moment there, and you pick him up, and you pick him up in the way that works for him. I feel just that support too. It just, that really does help you grow, I guess, in my opinion, as a person, and just overcoming mental challenges and just having that mental toughness. And dude, this past season there was some times where we were packing out where I was do I really like doing this?
Oh man,
am I going to do this again? You know what I mean? Because it's I had to take this little part of that memory and keep it with me forever of this can actually be really, really hard, to the point where you're not going to like it maybe, but that's okay, because now that I'm through it, that it's hell yeah, I like it. That was my favorite hunting, it's
right.
That was the greatest hunting memory ever. But I also think the cool thing about hunting in general too is it doesn't have to be that, man. And I also just guess I feel the last thing that I ever want is somebody to be thinks that it has to be that way. That's not what everybody has as a goal for hunting, or just life in general, right?
Yeah.
I love to go work out. I love to go for runs for really long distances. Just out of the blue, sometimes I'll go a really long way, and it's I like that. But I don't think that everybody has to like that. And it's just, it's cool, I guess, too, to have, like, with elk hunting specifically, but all hunting, have hunting buddies that, like, know that you're going to overcome these things with, and like all the people that I hunt with and friends with, like, you trust that they are mentally capable to handle, like, when it just gets as bad as it can get for that situation,
They're down for the cause, like whatever it is, like they're down
getting
for
soaking
it.
wet or freezing your ass off, or like wet and cold and whatever, and hiking long distances. I mean, just like the things that I'm really proud of sometimes are just like how ridiculous the physical aspect of a particular hunt was,
Right.
Like, I just like that a lot.
Yeah, it's like, to me, it's like finding the right hunting buddy is like they're worth their weight in gold. It's like, and so Chad Sylvester, we both know him. Like he and I hunt together a lot, because we both enjoy like those grinder, like it's almost like the suckier the hunt, the more we like it. You know what I mean? And the reason why we hunt well together is because neither of us are both like super optimistic all the time. You know what I mean? But it's like when someone had a rough day, it's like, and we both kind of say this, it's like, if he's had like a rough day for whatever reason, it's like, and we get back to camp or whatever, if we're hunting separately and we come back together or whatever, he knows that I'm going to be there and be like, hey dude, let's make a plan. Like, we got it. Let's figure out what we're going to do tomorrow. And if I come back and I've had like a rough day or whatever, it's like, he's the same way. It's like, all right, well, what happened today? What plan do we make based on that? What are you going to do tomorrow? And he's just kind of there to kind of help make sure I'm on the right path. You know what I mean? And so those hunting buddies are worth their weight in gold, man, for sure.
The last thing I want to say about the hunting buddies things, I think that's the part, having all this time to reflect. I think it's a good last word here, I guess. It's like having all this time to reflect, sit here and talk about the hunting strategy and the content. The thing that I know is true is that I miss my friends. And I think that's been the hardest part to deal with. Like, there's been these little moments where I have this like deal where like something makes me think about all the time that I'm missing with my friends. And I think that just goes to show how important that is, and how important that is to me, I guess, to have those hunting buddies and, be able to just look forward to hanging out with your friends that much that, like, that's probably the part that, well, it's definitely the part I miss. It's the part that I'm going to be the most excited to jump back into, and just something I'm going to try. Not that I ever think I did, but take for granted of, and just, always try to put them first, hunting friends first, like make sure they know that, like, I also appreciate it too, because, without your hunting buddies, you wouldn't be the hunter that you are. I really do believe that.
All right, folks, that is a wrap for today's show. I'd like to thank all of you for listening. And if you haven't yet, please head over to iTunes and leave us a 5-star rating. And be sure to subscribe to the podcast. And hell, while you're at it, head over to YouTube and give us a sub there as well. I'd be super appreciative if you do those couple things for me. Before I shut this thing down, I need to give a big shout out to our partners who continue to help us make this podcast possible. Spartan Forge, Tethered, Exodus Outdoor Gear, and Genesee Beer. And until next time, we'll see y'all.